Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. It is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, join us on this glorious Monday, the start of a brand new week, everybody. And we're glad that you're here to be a part of it with us. And listen, guys, we got a whole bunch of things we're going to talk about here today. But before we do any of that, you can't start off your week right without a solid dose of vitamin R. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, sir?
A dose of vitamin R, John. That's a new one even for me. It's great to be here. There's, as the Russians and the Saudis begin their oil war, there's so much just Ghibli entertainment news beginning this week, and I'm very excited to get into talking about it.
There is. And hey, there's something I wanted, before we dive into our off the tops here, guys, something I wanted to share with you. If you follow me on social media, you might have seen this, but you guys can see behind me, I like the Pops, Rob. I prefer hot toys, but these are a little bit more. I like the Pops, man. I like the Pops. So you can see from behind me, I like the Pops. But I went to Disneyland the other day so I could finally ride that Rise of Resistance ride, right? And we're going through Disneyland, the land of adventure, and my buddy catches something out of the corner of his eye, and he says, "John, look at that." And it is the biggest pop I have ever seen. And it's Indiana Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Indiana Jones. And you can see him there. He's got the idol. He's got the whip. This is a Disneyland exclusive. I'm telling you, dude, I'm in love with this thing. I'm absolutely... Now, I heard...
It's awesome. That's awesome.
I think I had heard that there were a couple of others that are that size that are exclusive to other places. Like I think Deadpool is one of them or something like that. But oh my God, I saw that. I'm like, I must have it. And you know how much it was? After my discount, because I'm a season pass holder, you get like a 10% discount or something. $36. 36. Wow. Yeah, I saw it. I thought, oh, that's going to be like $80. It was $36. I think even without the discount, it was like 41 or 42. So yeah, I snatched that thing up, man. I snatched that thing up, and I might buy one or two more if I go back just to have. I'll do my Christmas shopping early. I'll do all my Christmas shopping early and get it all done. Okay, listen, guys, we do have a lot of things that we need to talk about here today. So let's not waste any time and dive into our stuff right off the top. And it's an unfortunate. It's a somber note, guys, that we need to start off today's show with. One of the absolute screen legends, a man whose face and voice became instantly recognizable and iconic. Whether it was Seventh Seal, or whether it's more pop culture stuff like Game of Thrones, or whether it's Star Wars, or whether it's Rob, I'm going to tell you this, you're not going to approve, but when I think of Max von Sydow, I think of his iconic appearance as the villain of Brewmeister Smith in the all-time great classic film Strange Brew. That's what I think of. Strange Brew, my friend. But unfortunately and sadly, we did hear about the passing of Max von Sydow, who passes away at the age of 90. Rob, I know you were a big fan of much of his work, and you hear about the passing of Max von Sydow, and what are your thoughts and some of your favorite memories of him in the movies?
Well, first, let me just say I loved Strange Brew, and I love that he was in Strange Brew, and I think I think that speaks to his character. I think that, look, a lot of people first met Max von Sydow watching Bergman's movies, things like you said, Seven Seal, Virgin Spring, The Magician. But then again, I first saw him, I want to say I was like in the 6th grade when he was in two Swedish films called The Immigrants and The New Land. And then, of course, he was Lancaster Marin in The Exorcist and The Exorcist 2. He was Blofeld in Never Say Never Again. He was in Needful Things as the proprietor of everyone's favorite tchotchke shop. And then, he was in movies like The Ultimate Warrior, which is a crazy sci-fi film. But as I look at this, I'm just looking at his list of credits of things that I liked. He was in Death Watch. He was in Victory. He was in Conan the Barbarian as the king. Of course, Strange Brew. He was in Dreamscape. Remember Dreamscape?
Oh yes.
Another. I mean, you just go and you look at. He was in Wim Wenders Until the End of the World. Pele the Conqueror. I think he was nominated for an Oscar for that. Although I don't know. I don't remember. He was in Awakenings. God, you just look
Minority
up
Report.
Judge Dredd. Minority Report. He was so good in Minority Report as well. I mean,
and he would also do the cool thing about he would also do these little genre things like that James Purefoy movie, Solomon Kane. So he would be in these his prestigious roles, and he would do these little genre things at the same time. It was absolutely amazing.
I mean, he was in Shutter Island. He was in Rush Hour 3, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. I mean, he had, I never met him. I was never in a room with him. I never saw him speak live, but he was just a presence. And, Drew McWeeny was pointing out on Twitter today that when he was in The Exorcist, when it came out in the 70s, everybody thought he was 70 years old because he had Dick Smith's incredible old age makeup. And I think people believed, as Drew pointed out, that Max von Sydow was 70 years old for like 4 decades because people believed he was so believable in that role, and that old age makeup was so good, and what a career. I mean, he was an international icon. If you haven't seen what I think is one of the great fantasy movies ever made, which is The Seventh Seal, although a lot of people don't think of it as such, of course, he was the soldier who played chess with death. And that's kind of where Bill and Ted's, the death from Bill and Ted, and also in The Last Action Hero. I mean, it wasn't him, but The Seventh Seal is so iconic that it's been, how many pieces of pop culture has it touched upon? He was a giant. He was 90 years old. He had a great life and a great career. And he was just one of those, no one looks remotely like him.
Or sounds like him.
No, they don't. And he looks like he's like this spy out of World War II. I mean, he just had one of those amazing faces that I've always thought that you don't have to be a matinee idol when you're on the screen. If you just need the face, not that he wasn't a handsome man, but he had the face that when he was on screen and when you heard his voice, it's like that dude belongs in movies. And he always has ever since he was a young man. And it's, a giant has left us, but man, did he leave a legacy of great cinema behind him.
He exuded, whether he was in Seventh Seal decades ago or whether he was in a new Star Wars movie. When he was on screen, he exuded power. There was something about his physical stature, his voice.
Totally.
He exuded power. And you're right. We have lost one of the great giants at the age of 90. What a life and what a career. Guys, the question we put to all of you at home right now is, it's incredibly sad news, obviously, but it's also time to celebrate what an incredible life and legacy he leaves behind. When you think of him and all his huge catalog of films, what are the ones that stand out to you the most? Jump down to the comment section below and leave us your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to another off the top right now. One of the big hits of television and one of the big pop cultural kind of shifts that happened, of course, was the launching of Disney Plus this past year. And with it was the show The Mandalorian. A Mandalorian show that caught everybody's attention, and we talked about it week after week. And of course, the pop cultural new king of all pop culture, Baby Yoda. I'm telling you what, Rob, I went to Disneyland just recently. Holy crap, if I had $1 for every time I saw somebody walking by with a Baby Yoda on their shoulder, or a Baby Yoda t-shirt, or a Baby Yoda backpack, or Baby Yoda this, or their kids dressed as Baby Yoda, I mean, I would be a very, very rich man. It's
Dude,
crazy.
I was walking out of a subway train in New York City, and there was, as I got to the top of the steps, there was beautiful street graffiti of Baby Yoda.
He's taken over, Rob. Baby Yoda's taken over. And so, listen, we talked a little bit ago about how the fact that the brand new Mandalorian season 2 had started shooting. They're up running. Of course, John Favreau back as the executive producer and the showrunner of the show. Some people coming back to direct again, including John Favreau is apparently going to direct 1 or 2 episodes of the new season. Dave Filoni is back to direct. Bryce Dallas Howard is back to direct. I thought I heard Carl Weathers might be back, might actually direct an episode. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I thought, anyway. But the news today, ladies and gentlemen, is that not have they started production, they're done. They're done. According to now official reports, Mandalorian Season 2 has wrapped principal photography. This, of course, was first announced and then later confirmed. It was announced by Gina Carano, who put out on her social media, that's a wrap on Season 2. I absolutely love this work and the people in it, storytelling, Mandalorian, yada, yada, yada. And, of course, she was fabulous. It's the best I'd ever seen her. Outside of a combat cage, it was the best I had ever seen Gina Carano was in Mandalorian Season 1. Mandalorian Season 2 is now a wrap. It's that word we use all the time around here, Rob, tangibilization. It's actually real. It's actually coming. And I got to tell you, I am more excited about Season 2 than I was about Season 1. And I was pretty stoked leading into Season 1, but there was a big unknown factor to it going into Season 1, right? It's like, it's a television thing. It's on Disney Plus. I wasn't quite sure. I had my doubts about what production value would be like, and with their whole virtual screen thing, what they did was amazing. But now that I saw Season 1, I find myself even more excited about Season 2 going into it, and hearing that it's wrapped production, and it's actually not that far away at this point. Rob, you hear about them wrapping production on Season 2. What are your thoughts on it going in?
I hope we have more than 8 episodes. No,
I agree. I agree.
I'm excited. You know, say what you want. Did I think The Mandalorian was perfect? No, but I really thought it was damn entertaining. And I was surprised once you got used to the fact that it had these nice sort of self-contained episodes and the format, and I really got into it. And by the last episode, dude, and that last episode was pretty great. And I was in, man. And I felt like for the first time I was seeing something that felt full as far as a Star Wars vision is concerned. I felt that it was fully realized in terms of what they were going for. And I thought that was pretty great. I really liked seeing that. And I think, you know, this theme song, the imagery, the ship designs. I mean, even like the Beskar armor when he finally, you know, I loved how he got more armor as he went along. And some people said, oh, it's like a video game power-up thing. But I'm like, no, you know.
That was like Dungeons and Dragons leveling up. That's what it was to me.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be forged, you know, and they added to the Mandalorian armor. And come on, man, who didn't love that scene when all the Mandalorians step up to save him on the streets of... That was dope, dude.
The last 2 episodes, too, just absolutely crushed it, brought it home.
Yeah.
It brought Season 1 to a great conclusion while at the same time setting up Season 2. Like, I hate it when a show just uses its final 1 or 2 episodes of their season to do nothing but set up the next season. This did it both. It brought a great conclusion to the story of Season 1, and it also set up where we can go moving forward. And I think the expectations are just juked now. And I agree. That's not something a lot of people are talking about, is I would like to see a few more episodes, because Rob, I know there have been a few people that have complained, and I understand that there are times in The Mandalorian where it feels, you know, episodic instead of ongoing, you know, main storyline. But I personally saw that as a strength. I really did enjoy that. I like the idea of the lone Western gunfighter and a new dusty little town he wanders into one week, and just seeing that episode. And I kind of dug it, and I would love to see more, especially if each one of those episodes continues to add to the mythos, if you will, of The Mandalorian. And but I agree with you, man. I would like to see them go a little bit more. I think maybe you and I, Rob, agree that the thinking going into Season 1 was probably a lot along the lines of, we don't know how this is all going to turn out. We don't know how people are going to respond to this. And so, hey, 8 episodes, shorter episodes. Let's see what happens. I'm hoping that they look at that success and go, you know what? We can breathe a little bit more. Let's go 10. Let's put a little, I don't know. We'll see. But whatever it's going to be, Rob, I'm just happy we're getting more. So the question is for you guys. You hear that Mandalorian Season 2 is now wrapped on its principal production. How are you feeling about it? Are you more or less excited than you were moving into Season 1? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, one last thing off the top for us to get to, and that's this. Rob, we know that there is a Black Widow movie coming. A Black Widow movie that I have not been all that excited about, to be honest with you. I've always said for a long time in the MCU, there are two standalone movies I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in Hawkeye. Even though I love him in the MCU, I'm not interested in a standalone movie of his, and I'm not interested in Black Widow. Like Hawkeye, love her in the MCU, not really interested in a standalone. The trailers have come out. One I thought was okay. One was a little bit better. One got me kind of more intrigued in the movie and stuff like that. But Rob, today, this morning, on this very fortnight, they released a brand new Black Widow trailer.
Bruh.
And I'm going to tell you, I am now effing excited for this movie. I have never been in this place. They moved me from, they're doing it, to, okay, yeah, all right, I'm intrigued. Now, today, I am excited, Rob. I am now officially excited for this movie. I never thought I would get to this place, but I am. I'm stoked for it. Rob, you had a chance to check out this trailer a little bit earlier. What did you think about the trailer for Black Widow?
Dude, I loved it. Like, I wish this kind of was the first trailer.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, this trailer really, what I love about this movie is, look, it's still in the MCU where we had the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, and Endgame. I love how this movie, aside from perhaps the free fall sequence, which I'll live with, but it looks so grounded. It looks like a Bond movie more so than ever before. And I'll tell you something else. My MVP of the last year is Florence Pugh. I love her. I love her depiction. I love her Russian accent. I love the way she looks. I love what the relationships looks like, at least in this trailer. I love the action. I mean, the same way, when the Russo brothers came on the scene with Winter Soldier and they had looked at things like Michael Mann's Heat, and they went back and looked at Friedkin's Chase in To Live and Die in L.A. This film looks like it's taking a page from whether it's Bond or Bourne or any of these great international action spy thrillers. I mean, I'm just down with this. The scene where she's in the car, their truck that gets flipped over after getting hit by an RPG, and you've got the slow motion rollover and she's in the car. I'm like, I eat that shit up, John. I love that stuff. This movie looks so good to me. I hope it. I even like the new, how they've like when she walks away and they turn it into a graphic and they make it the one sheet graphic with the red hourglass. That new one sheet they put out is dope. I can't wait for this movie.
Yeah, and listen, I'll tell you what did it for me. The action, as you point out in the trailer, is fantastic. I absolutely. The action in it is great. It's top notch. It didn't feel too over the top, but just over the top enough because it's a comic book movie, right? So I really dug that. But here's the part that really got me, and some of the elements that really brought me into it. They gave us a much better idea about what is this story about.
Yes.
And on top of that, I am always talking, Rob, about that. The MCU has to be careful that they need to make sure they're changing gears. Not every movie can be about save the universe, save the world, save the universe, save the world. It can't always be that. You need to change gears. They did it with Ant-Man. They changed gears. They downgeared. It's about saving his family in Ant-Man, right? It was a beautiful change of gears. And I feel like in this one becomes much more personal. This trailer made it feel like this issue and this stuff that they're dealing with is much more personal to them, about going back into their past, trying to save the girls that no one could save them from that fate at the time. So not only are they actually giving it some heavy narrative, they're making it more personal to the character, and they're changing the stakes. They're changing gears. And as long as the MCU, I've always said this, as long as they can make sure they continue to change gears, vary up the feel of the genre of the films and all that kind of stuff, they can stay very healthy and very successful for a long time. And one of the scenes that was a great example of this, Rob, right near the end of the trailer, they're all sitting around the family table, dinner table, and they're talking about slouching at the table. listen to your mother. And Black Widow, are you listening to yourselves? Like, there was just something about that felt really great. But neither you or I have touched on this. And let me bring this up for a second. I have always thought before this trailer that Taskmaster is just, okay, this is just your villain of the week. He's just there to be, that's fine, no problem.
Au contraire.
Au contraire. Dude, I remember seeing in the one trailer that it's okay, it looks like he's kind of fighting like Captain America. But now he's coming out and he's Black Panther now all of a sudden. And then we see him studying footage of whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be somebody that is like mimic combat styles of like all the different Avengers. And I don't know if they're going to say in the movie, now we can say what you want about the comic books and stuff like that. I don't know what they're going to say in the movie about this, but I don't know if they're going to say he has any superhuman abilities. I don't know if he's taken a Russian version of a super serum. I don't know if he's just a guy who's super brilliant and has studied all these techniques. But I'll tell you what, I have all of a sudden made this villain a villain I'm really looking forward to in the MCU. So it also won me over on that level. What did you think about him?
Dude, he looks badass. And the fact that like he's running these chicks, like he's sapped their will and taken away they have to obey him or something. And look, I've come down to judge my MCU villains as to whether or not I would like to own the hot toy of them. And this goes Taskmaster goes to the top of that list with number 1 with the bullet. What a cool design. He looks badass. He looks formidable. He looks, not only is he cunning and smart, as evidenced by studying the footage, but he can fight. I mean, this guy's a dangerous dude, and he commands an army of female assassins that it was not lost on me that you see these women descending from the ceiling a la how a spider would. Right. I was like, I get it. The spiders are coming for Black Widow, and all hell is going to break loose. I love that. I mean, this movie everything about this movie is so right up my alley. And since we're not getting No Time to Die, we're not getting James Bond until November, my international action spy thriller itch looks to be very much scratched by this movie, John.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we're going to talk more Black Widow here in just a few minutes with another topic. But for now, what did you guys think about this trailer? You guys, I have just not been able to be excited about a Black Widow movie up to now. This trailer did it for me. That's the power of a trailer. What did you guys think about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's now move on to our main topics of the day. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's absolutely free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submitted topic as one of the main featured topics here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Rachel Hughes, who writes, "Hi, John. On your recommendation, I went out to see Onward this weekend, and I wasn't disappointed. Unfortunately, I looked at the box office results this weekend, and it didn't do nearly as well as most other Pixar movies do. Why do you think this really high-quality movie didn't do as well as others?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Rachel. And yes, Onward is now in theaters, and it's a really good movie. One of the top Pixar movies? I don't think so, but a really, really good movie nonetheless. And unsurprisingly, it did take the top spot at the box office. However, it did not do as well as we've come to be accustomed to being of a Pixar movie doing on its opening weekend. Let's take a look quickly here at the opening weekend box office chart. Starting in at number 1, Onward makes $40 million. Now, 40 for a lot of films is great. $40 million opening for a lot of films is great. But not so much for Pixar. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Invisible Man continues to hold in strong, making another $15 million. Remember, guys, this was a movie that cost $7 million to make, and they keep climbing up. They keep making more and more money. The Way Back, which I was supposed to see this weekend, and I couldn't go, so Ann and I are going to run out to see it tonight. But by all accounts, great movie, original movie. People keep screaming, "We want more original movies!" and then they don't go support them and makes $8.5 million at the box office. Sonic the Hedgehog makes another $8 million, continuing its really impressive run. The Call of the Wild makes another $7 million, doing better because apparently word of mouth on it is it's a pretty good movie, so it's hanging in there. Still going to lose the studio a lot of money, but still it's hanging in there. But Rob, the topic here, though, is Onward. Onward makes $40 million. Good for many movies, absolutely. But in context, that means the only other Pixar movies in history to have a lower opening weekend, there's just two. One of them was Toy Story 1. Going all the way back to the very first Pixar film, really, that's in our consciousness, is Toy Story 1. That one made less opening weekend. The only other Pixar film to make less was a lot of people's opinions, maybe the worst of the Pixar movies. I actually kind of liked it, but anyway, it was The Good Dinosaur. The Good Dinosaur, which a lot of people don't even remember that movie. That one made less. But aside from that, Onward becomes the lowest grossing of all of these films. And it is a shame. And it's a shame. And we'll get to the question about why did it open that low. But just let me emphasize again why it's a shame. This is a really good quality movie. This is a movie that is, of course, because it's Pixar, it's got smiles and laughs, and it's enjoyable, and it's entertaining. But beyond that, it has some real heart to it. You know, I was mentioning, Rob, when I saw the film, I saw it with my wife, Ann. Ann describes herself as ugly crying through the movie because it really does a good job of speaking to the heart, and it does a really good job on that level. And I thought it was, again, not one of Pixar's best, but a really good Pixar movie nonetheless. Nonetheless, it is the third lowest opening, other than the first Toy Story and Good Dinosaur, which nobody remembers, lowest opening film ever. I think there might be a couple of things that are contributing to this. Number one, and we talked about this like a month ago, Rob. I don't think the people at Pixar really knew how to market this movie. And I don't blame them a lot for that because as somebody who has seen the movie, I'm not sure how you market this movie. It was a strange one to market because even at D23, they showed us like a 7-minute opening and I was in love with it. But then I saw the trailers and like, okay, the trailers just don't capture that magic like them showing us the first 7, 8, 9 minutes of the movie did. And of course you can. That's a little bit of a different thing. So I think on that level, they did it. I also never felt like they put as much effort into the marketing of this movie as I've seen them put into other movies as well. So there's that. There's also the question, because of the era we're in right now, that some people are raising, maybe it was the corona thing. Maybe it's the coronavirus that did it. I don't know. It still feels kind of early, especially in the U.S. markets for a lot of that. So I personally, Rob, am leaning over towards, because it's a good movie. It's getting good word of mouth. It's got good reviews. But I don't know how excited I would have been had I not been at D23 and saw the opening 9 minutes of the movie. If all I had to go on was the trailers, I'm not sure I would have been totally as excited to see it as I was. So I'm not sure. Rob, it comes in at number one. We understand that if you or I made a movie that opened to $40 million, we'd be popping bottles. But it is the third lowest in Pixar's thing. What do you attribute that to, do you think?
Well, first of all, you know, the virus that shall not be named, I think that has caused a little bit of a downturn in movie going. Anybody who wants to be in a closed environment, I think that might have been a factor, not the biggest factor, but a factor. But as you pointed out, you know, even I've loved Pixar movies since pretty much day one. This film has a bit of a high concept. I mean, yes, the fantasy world and the brothers, but what they're trying to achieve is a little wacky. And it's a little difficult to convey. And I think when you do convey it, and you do convey what's actually going on in this movie, I think it might have, believe it or not, I do believe that it doesn't have, say, the drawing power of Forky. You know, as far as Pixar is going to go, it's a little weird. And look, I don't know if that's the case, but like you said, the marketing on this movie was not. I felt that that's something you and I are always keenly aware of, is how movies are marketed. We sort of look into that. Our radar picks it up from the very earliest posters or trailers that drop. You and I think about movie marketing a lot. I think we pay more attention to it than other online pundits. And if we're saying that, I mean, I agree. I think the marketing for this movie, both of the movies, Pixar has another movie coming out this year that I'm really interested in seeing, and that too is a little bit of a wacky concept, but it's about a jazz musician who ends up with a unique problem in his life, and I'm really excited for that. But even that, I feel like they just figure that, well, these aren't going to have the drawing power of a Toy Story. But then I think back, look at Coco, man.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, what a movie that is.
But you raise a great point. You raised a great point that another aspect here is that how often have we seen Pixar trying to market one of their movies and marketing another one of their movies that's coming later at the same time? And the feedback I've been hearing and reading is that people are a lot more interested in Soul than they were. And maybe it's because of, like you pointed out, that high concept of what we're getting in Soul. But people seem to be more interested in Soul than in Onward, and it may end up being a better movie and a more interesting movie, but this is the first time I can remember Pixar marketing two of their movies at the same time. Instead of focusing all their energy and marketing on Onward, they were also saying, oh, by the way, guys, we've got this other one coming, and more people are, instead of looking at Onward, they're like, ooh, look at Soul. We've never seen anything like that before. Do you think that had much to do with it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think people know. I didn't know much about Soul until, I don't know, was it a trailer they showed or a clip they showed? Whatever it was that I saw, because I didn't know much about what the movie was about. But when I saw that trailer, that whatever it was I saw, I'm like, oh, I gotta see that. Also, because I'm a jazz music fan. But this movie didn't. This might sound weird, but it didn't seem like a Pixar movie. It seemed like an animated film from anyone else. And while obviously it had the joy of a Pixar movie, it certainly had the star power of both Chris and Tom Holland. It felt like someone else's movie. Maybe people don't know it's Pixar. Like I don't know how they couldn't, but it just felt like the whole land of make-believe, of fantasy, and to me it was great, but maybe that was part of it too. I don't know.
All right. Well, question here is, guys, listen, it did come in number one at the box office. A lot of films would love to make 40, but for a Pixar film, it was pretty low. What do you attribute the lower than normal performance for a Pixar movie, considering it's actually a really good movie? What do you guys think? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Geeky Gator, who writes, "Hey, John and crew. With No Time to Die being pushed back to November 25th, that means it is opening only 5 days after Godzilla vs. Kong. I agree with you when you say that 2 weeks is enough time in between blockbusters, but this seems too close for comfort. Do you think this is going to stay? And if not, who's gonna move?" All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, man. And yes, of course, we were so focused, and a lot of us have been so focused on the fact that Godzilla vs. Kong, or Bond, I should say, has been moved off its release date. A lot of us have overlooked the fact about when it's been moved to. And it has been moved into the same week frame of Godzilla vs. Kong. We have two, on their surface, blockbuster films opening in the same week span, 5 days apart. They're going to be opening on that. Rob, I'm going to tell you right now, dude, this is not good news for either of them. This is not a good situation for either of them. And I think both studios are cognizant of that and aware of that. That this, I don't think, can stand. Now, on the one hand, let's also keep in mind that, we call Kong versus Godzilla blockbuster. Is it? I mean, probably yes. But we look at the box office results of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and maybe the folks over at Bond said, actually, that's not that big of a problem. Look at what it did at the box office previously. We think we can handle that. But it's not just Kong. It's now Kong versus Godzilla. It's not just Godzilla, it's Godzilla versus Kong. It's the two of these giant two of the most iconic movie monsters of all time, are going to be going at it in this film. And that's got to present a little bit of a problem. In the question of, do I think one will move? Yeah, I do. I think one of these is going to move. And you would think that it might be Godzilla versus Kong, but I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be surprised at all if Bond doesn't move again. Now, the argument against that, of course, Rob, is that, well, Bond moved to their November 25th date, already knowing that Godzilla versus Kong was in November 20th. They already knew that. And they moved it there. So maybe that would suggest that they won't. But I do think one of them will move. I think the two studios are probably going to make some phone calls to each other and say, look, this isn't a good situation for either of us. Let's figure this out. What kind of deal can we cut with each other? Hey, how about you move off the date and we'll make a concession by moving something else out of your way over there or something like that. But I just feel that by the time November comes around, I feel like one of them is going to move. I won't be shocked if they don't, but right now I feel like one of them is going to move. Rob, first of all, what do you think about the situation about having these two movies opening 5 days apart from each other? And ultimately, do you think they're both going to stand their ground, or do you think one of them is going to move?
Well, look, obviously it's not a great situation for No Time to Die or Kong versus Godzilla, both movies that I am deliriously excited for. The feeling of Ghibli that they instill in me is great, John. It feels it's a great feeling comes over me when I think about them both, obviously. I don't know if they'll move because you've got the Thanksgiving holiday, and we're going into the holidays. I mean, maybe I could see No Time to Die maybe moving into December, but I don't know. I think if it is, Thanksgiving, it's a big movie going time. And I think both movies might survive in the marketplace. It definitely would be a battle royale. But No Time to Die is probably by far the more expensive of the two of them. So I don't know. I could see them both winding up staying there and actually doing pretty well because of that thing, at least doing well domestically. I think it'll make the Thanksgiving holiday movie-going season quite exciting for me. I'm very excited.
It would be pretty cool going to the theaters and looking up and say, oh, I can go see Bond or I can go see Kong versus Godzilla. That's not a bad weekend, but you raise a great point about the holiday weekend. That's actually an excellent point. Maybe that entices them to think, you know what, there's enough to go around for everybody in the state. That's a good idea. Hey guys, you look at this situation, Bond, Godzilla versus Kong opening 5 days apart from each other. Do you ultimately think one of them is going to move? Do you think that, as Rob's kind of suggesting, that there could be enough audience there for everybody and that they both stay? How do you think it's going to work out? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Edison M, who writes, "Hey, John. Just wondering if you saw that Black Widow early box office tracking numbers have come out and they're projecting it could make up to $130 million opening weekend. To be clear, the actual projected number is anywhere between 90 and 130. That's the window they're giving it right now. If it does come in that high, would that be considered good or bad for an MCU film?" All right, thanks for sending that in, man. And yeah, we were just talking about Black Widow a little while ago, and now this one. And I'm going to tell you, Rob, I'm going to say something that's completely the opposite of what I was going to say before. Okay, so the early tracking has come out from Box Office Pro. And what they are forecasting right now, it's still a little ways off, but what they're forecasting right now is that the opening weekend domestic box office for Black Widow can come in anywhere between $90 and $130 million. Now, to Edison's question about would that be considered a good thing? Oh, hell yes. Hell yes. Are you effing kidding me? If it comes in anywhere near $130 million, that blows away any expectations I had, for sure. Especially when you're considering it is a standalone movie of a character who's never had a standalone movie before, has always been a supporting character in the overall MCU, is a character that everybody already knows has died, so it's a prequel sort of a film. If you would have told me, Rob, 2 months ago, that there was a chance that this Black Widow movie could open to $130 million, insane. I would have said no way. I would have said no way. No, it ain't going to make $130 million. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. But today, I've seen the new Black Widow trailer. I've seen the new Black Widow trailer today, and I'm looking at it, and it makes me reconsider my life choices, Rob, because I look at that movie and I go, well, somebody who's pretty staunchly not been excited for this film, or even the idea of a Black Widow solo movie for years, I'm sitting here now jumping up and down my seat wanting to see this film. And I got to believe if it's having that effect on me, it's probably having that effect on a bunch of other people as well. And whereas before I would have said, that seems crazy, today I got to say, I don't know that 130 million opening sounds all that crazy. Look, there's still a couple of things you got to keep in mind about it, though. Still a couple of things you got to keep in mind about it. The first thing you got to keep in mind about it is that you and I have talked before, Rob, that after Endgame was done, there was a hangover, if you will. It's like a lot of movie fans and even the diehard MCU fans is like, okay, MCU is kind of somewhere in our brains at the end of Endgame. It said the MCU's done. I mean, obviously it wasn't, but it kind of felt that way a little bit. Okay, now it's finished. It's complete. It's done. And there's been a little bit of what I've called an MCU or an Endgame hangover since then. So I don't know that there's as much hype for it since Endgame. And of course, Spider-Man Far From Home followed up Endgame very quickly. And it was Spider-Man. It was the next film of his. There was all this news surrounding Spider-Man. And it went on to be $1 billion film, of course. So there's that. All the other things. It's still questionable. Look, I'm not saying it will hit $130 million. I'm not saying it will. But today, I don't think that's as crazy of a number as I would have thought, say, even 24 hours ago. Rob, when you look at and take all the things into consideration, it's never had a movie about her solo. Post Endgame, it's a prequel movie, but that new trailer we just saw, you see these early projections of 90 to 130. Do you think it'll fall in there? Do you think it might come lower? Do you think it might come higher? Where do you put it right now?
I got to tell you, I think it could even go higher. And wow. I think because again, like with Captain Marvel, I think this is servicing a part of the audience, namely female viewers, that have been underserved. This is really the third behind Wonder Woman and behind Captain Marvel that is serving the female audience. And it's not just Black Widow. We're meeting her sister. We're meeting her mother. We're meeting the whole cadre of the Red Room ladies who are, I guess, the elite of the trained killers. I mean, this is a really female-centric movie that also is incredibly attractive to the male audience as well. And I really think that this is going to get moms and daughters in the theater again, the same way that Captain Marvel did, that sent Captain Marvel over $1 billion. And I think if this movie is as good as it looks, also, you know what's strange about this? You know what really is, as you pointed out earlier, that the tag in the trailer, the domestic scene, like this family of trained killers. Still, when you're sitting at the table with your mom, she tells you to sit up straight. It doesn't matter how lethal you are. When you get around the dinner table, we're all equal. We all have moms or dads bitching at us. And I thought that was kind of funny. And I do think that this movie looks wildly entertaining. And I think, assuming, that the public still ventures out into the world, I think this could do quite well.
Well, Rob, with that said, I made that the topic of today's question of the day. I wanted to put it to you guys. Now, with these projections that we're seeing, these tracking numbers saying could be up to 130, which I thought sounded kind of high. I wanted to put to you guys. So just before we started the show, we put up this poll on my Twitter. You can go over to my Twitter, simply at John Campea. And I put up the poll there and I simply asked, Black Widow box office tracking suggests the film could open as high as $130 million opening weekend, which seems high to me. Now, remember, I wrote this before I saw the new trailer, but still, which seems high to me. What do you think the opening for Black Widow will be? And right now, only 13.3% of you guys are saying that you believe, because almost 2,500 of you guys have responded already. Only a little over 13% of you are saying it's going to come in above $130 million. 35.6% of you are saying it's going to come in right around $130 million. 51.1% of you guys are saying you think it's going to come in below. And as I stroll through the comments, I'm noticing a lot of people are saying, like right up here with Esteval Garcia, is saying that they don't think it will, but because they because of coronavirus worries and things like that. So again, I think it's a very interesting number. Only 13% of you are saying you think it's going to be above 130. 51.1% of you saying it's going to be below. So there's that. I'm starting to believe. I would have said below before. I'm starting to believe. I've changed my vote to right around. I've changed my, so maybe 115 to 130. I'm thinking right around. Rob, you're saying you still think there's a chance it could come in over. So the question here is, guys, is what do you think? How do you think Black Widow is going to fare on its opening weekend, all things considered? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to our fourth and final main topic today. And our fourth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Greg Meyer, who writes, with Jurassic World Dominion now shooting, I came across a story that there is a Jurassic World TV series in development that takes place in the same world as the movies and will be airing on the new Peacock network. What are your thoughts? All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, a quick perusal around my news feed this morning, I saw there are a number of places running that story that they are developing a Jurassic World movie now, or Jurassic World TV series, I should say. As I always tell everybody, whenever you hear a story like this, I encourage everybody to follow it back to the source. Don't tell me what website you read it on. Tell me what website or where that website said they got their information from. And as you go through, you're finding that this story is coming from one place. And it is a Jurassic World fan site called Jurassic Outpost. Now, that does not mean it's not true. That doesn't mean it's not true. I'm just saying you need to weigh that in and understanding this isn't coming from Variety. This isn't coming from The Hollywood Reporter. This isn't coming from Deadline. It's not coming from Entertainment Weekly. This is coming from a fan site. However, it's a pretty damn good fan site that doesn't get into the habit of throwing around wild BS rumors. So let's take a look at seeing what they're saying about this. Jurassic Outpost wrote the following. We've learned Amblin Television has begun developing a live-action Jurassic World series. Not much is known at this time. However, the series has enlisted Jurassic alum Colin Trevorrow and Steven Spielberg as producers, alongside newcomers Justin Falvey and Daryl Frank. Daryl Frank and Justin Falvey are the co-presidents of Amblin Television, where they oversee all development, production, and programming for the company. The article goes on to mention a number of the things that they talk about. All right. First of all, I'm going to tell you about why there is a possibility this could be true. Here's what you got to weigh. A Jurassic World television series is consistent with what we've been hearing about the franchise for almost a year now. We have been hearing whispers for almost a year now that they actually might be looking at expanding this Jurassic World world. And also delving into television. We, of course, just last year, not too long ago, saw them kind of dip their toe into different mediums by releasing a short film, Jurassic World film, on YouTube with the Battle at Big Rock or Battle at Heavy Rock or Battle of the Rock Bands. I can't remember what it was called. But they dipped their toe into doing that, right? And we've been hearing some whispers that they might want to be expanding. We know that there's an animated series coming. A Jurassic World animated series is coming. So we know that's there too. So I would suggest that there is reasonable stuff out there that would make it, again, I'll use the word reasonable, to think that maybe this could be true. Now, of course, you got to take that and balance it out with the fact that there's no, larger reputable thing confirming this information or verifying this information. It's still all just coming from a fan site. So that's usually a pretty big red flag when a big piece of news like this is coming from a non-big source. It doesn't mean it's not true. It just, you got to take that into consideration. So Rob, I'm going to say right now, I don't know if this is true or not, but I won't be surprised if it is. Given all the other anecdotal evidence that we've had over the past year, I won't be surprised at all if it is true. And it would end up on that frickin' Peacock network. Not that I got a problem with the network. It's just the stupidest name in the world for a network. Anyway, so for now, I would say take this story with a grain of salt. It could be true, might not be. I won't be surprised if it is. But Rob, you see this. First of all, what do you think about the idea at all about branching out and going into a television series? And then ultimately, do you think this report is even true?
Well, first of all, look, ever since I was a small boy, the idea of people getting eaten by dinosaurs has been right up my alley. As long as, I can't get enough, whether it was stop motion dinosaurs, whatever kind of dinosaurs there are, any dinosaurs that are eating people is something that I want to watch. So that said, bring on the dinosaurs. Now, it is difficult convincing dinosaurs of the Jurassic Park quality. I would imagine would be quite pricey for whether it's a weekly show or however they're going to do it. So it could be an expensive show to produce, but they'll concentrate heavily on the human characters, and then they'll give us a couple of violent dinosaur deaths, maybe once an episode. But I think this makes sense to me. They round out the trilogy, they round out the Jurassic World trilogy. And moving on to a streaming service, especially if they're confident, I would imagine that whatever the final Dominion is about, it's probably going to leave off in a place that makes a TV show pretty viable. Like whatever the situation is, if the world is now the dinosaurs' Dominion, that means there's a bunch of stories to tell. And I think that means they're confident in terms of the movie, and they know that. I think that there's an eternal quality. Kids love dinosaurs, John. They'll always love dinosaurs. They always have loved dinosaurs. And who wouldn't want to watch a Jurassic Park show if it's good? I'm in, man. And I think it makes sense to me. Now, whether they're going to make it, I don't know. But I think it's something with these streaming shows. They need marquee titles. And I think a Jurassic World show or a Jurassic Park, however they're going to, I guess it would be World now. Who wouldn't want to watch that? That's a marquee show for a new streaming network. That is a destination program for a majority of the viewing audience.
Yeah, and you raise a good point there, too, because when you look at the landscape, now look, the streaming wars are just beginning.
Yes.
But when you look at the landscape, Netflix, obviously, they have Umbrella Academy. They have Stranger Things. They have, the list is long. The list is long of what big marquee things Netflix has. Disney Plus came out of the gate firing with Mandalorian, and now they got their MCU shows coming and all that kind of stuff. You look even over at Amazon. They got a Lord of the Rings coming up, including a number of other high-profile things. Peacock, it still hurts to say it, but anyway, this network is going to need, you're exactly right, Rob, they're going to need a marquee title. They need a big flagship marquee title, and this could be it. So again, I am not saying I think this report is true, but I am saying that there's enough stuff here that makes it seem like it makes sense and would theoretically be a good idea, that if it does end up being true, I'm not going to be completely surprised. So whether it's true or not, we'll have to wait and see. Guys, the question for you is, two questions really. Number one, do you think there's any validity when you look at the landscape? Do you think there's any validity to the story? Question number two, theoretically speaking, would doing a Jurassic World series be a good idea? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with all that stuff down and out of the way, we're going to move on to your live questions and hear what you guys want to talk about. I'm sure we're going to talk more about the Black Widow stuff and Jurassic World and everything else. But before we do, as Robert and I do every day, we're going to take a quick 4-minute break here. Just give us a chance to rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs, refill our drinks, give you a chance to run and use the bathroom, if you will. So if you guys will hang tight with us, don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as we took just a little bit of a break there. And now let's dive in and start taking your guys' live questions. And we're going to get things started here with Andres. Andres Moran writes, by the way, I've seen both Won't You Be My Neighbor and Castaway, but some things hit you differently depending on your state of mind. Keep on the filthy. Thanks so much for that, Andres. And yes, we were talking about this the other day, that it depends on... A lot of times a movie depends on when and where you are in your life when you see it for the type of impact that it'll have on you. And definitely, I talked a little bit about how seeing Castaway, I saw that not too long after somebody I knew, a friend of mine, had taken their own life, and wishing, oh my God, I wish I could have showed them this, you know, to whatever. But you're right. It really does depend on where we are in our lives when we see certain movies, you get certain effects. James Durden writes, where are we at? James Durden writes, though chances are slim Henry Cavill will play Wolverine or do another Superman, he is still interested in Superman, and I've heard that playing any major character in the MCU would be the final nail in the coffin to ever being Superman again in the DCU. Thoughts? No, that's absolute nonsense. You can throw that out of your head right now. That is absolute nonsense. That if he somehow plays Rob, an MCU character, that's it. He can never play Superman again. No, that's complete BS. There's a long list of actors who have been both in MCU movies and DCU movies. That's not a problem. The issue about him being Superman, again, is not about whether he's interested. That's never been the issue. The issue is Warner Brothers don't want him as Superman anymore. And they're not moving forward with their own Superman stuff. And things can change. Things can change, but that's the problem. So him wanting to be Superman isn't the issue. Rob, what do you think about all that?
No, I totally agree with that. I think the studio, it's hard to come up in this day and age. What story do you tell? Who is the villain you throw at Superman? What is he after you get rid of Zod? What, they've already done Doomsday. What do you do? I think the real problem is they just don't have the story. They don't have a great Superman story to tell. If they did, they would make it. But I know for a fact it's really hard to come up with those stories to make into films. And I think if they had the great story, they would have gone right into it. And I do think that the perception is, after Batman v Superman and after Justice League, that they want to go a different direction. As much as I'm loath to admit that. And I think if he wants to come into the MCU, he should. But I think even if he did, that's not going to be any, whether he plays Wolverine or whatever he's going to play, if they had a great Superman script, they would still make it with him. I just don't think they have one.
All right. Or a future path, like a path to see where they would want to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How it would fit into the new DCU they're trying to create. So it's just a lot. But the issue is not whether Henry Cavill's interested. That has nothing to do with it at this point.
Right.
And absolutely, if he did an MCU movie and he's not going to be Wolverine, people, but if he did do an MCU movie, that does not shut the door on him being Superman again. So just like he's The Witcher, does that mean he can't be in a DC movie? That he can't be in an MCU movie? Of course he still can. Anyway, a good Canadian kid writes, Sorry, I thought I sent you this message. Just realized that it didn't go through. Fun fact about Collywood. A.R. Rahman started his career in Collywood. He has won 2 Oscars for original score and song for Slumdog Millionaire. I knew that about Slumdog Millionaire. I don't know what the other one is, though. But listen, you cannot underestimate the growing power of the Bollywood and, as you point out, Collywood films. I mean, it's a thing that's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And to the point that AMC Theaters, when I was still there, we were actually the theater was looking to start its own programming of putting Bollywood films in certain local theaters. And it's a growing thing. So thanks for sharing that, man. Jonathan writes, my quick movie review of The Way Back. Phenomenal performance, really centers on Affleck. Conventional plot heightened by Affleck's engaging performance. Avoids stereotypical ending. First movie I've seen in weeks, and I am impressed. Great grade B+. Rob, I had my ticket. I was all set to go. But then something came up and I had to work on something, and I kept looking at the clock as I was working. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. And I didn't make it, and I couldn't go see it. So Ann and I are going to plan to have dinner tonight and then run over and go see The Way Back because it looks good. And I'm hearing nothing but amazing things about Affleck in it. What have you seen, or have you seen it, or what have you heard?
No. And I ended up I was slammed with work this weekend, and I really, you know me, I love my Ben Affleck, and we love The Accountant, John. And I've heard nothing but good things about it. And that I've heard it's different than just your ultimately man triumphs over adversity feel-good sports movie. I hear there's a lot more to it than just that. And I'm excited to see it.
All right, next one up comes to us from TJ Lim, who writes, I just watched The Session with John Hawkes. I love him. And Helen Mirren, love her. The synopsis intrigued me and sounded filthy. Then after seeing it, though it contains sex and nudity, they don't feel filthy or sexy, but they feel more educational and therapeutic. I like it. I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea what we're talking about. What's The Session? I'm not familiar with it. Are you, Rob? Is it a movie? Is it a streaming series?
I don't know. I know that there's Session 9 that I really like.
Don't know that. But that's it.
The Session, I don't know what that is. Let me
bring it up here. It is a 2012 film that I am simply not familiar with. John Hawkes, William H. Macy, Adam Arkin is in it. Ray Perlman is in it. Man, I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff. I got to tell you, it's way beyond me. William H. Macy plays a priest of some sorts. A man in an iron lung who wishes to lose his virginity contacts a professional sex surrogate with the help of his therapist and priest. I'm just not familiar with it. You've heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah. I absolutely. Now that I've heard the plot, now I'm looking it up. Yes, I have not seen it, but I remember this. There was a lot of talk about this because I met John Hawkes at a deli. At a deli,
really?
in Los Feliz, and I was with somebody that he knew, and he talked about this movie, so yeah,
I might have to put that on my radar. Thank you for putting that on our radars, Mr. TJ. Appreciate that. Gus's Movie Reviews blog.fart writes, thank you so much for all the free publicity you're doing for my site on your show. Of course, every once in a while I'm trying to make up like a fake name of a website. It's like, come on, it's not like it's coming from like Gus's Movie Review blog.fart. So there you go. I'm glad I'm changing the world one person at a time, Gus. I'm glad I'm changing the world one person at a time. All right. Let's see. 50 Shades writes, happy Purim to all my fellow Jews watching the show today. I dress up as CW's Green Arrow in honor of the final season. And because I can't be in the sun because of my surgery, this costume has a good, so, I mean, it makes you feel good. So John Campea, you have failed the city, which is of course back when Green Arrow was good. Back when Green Arrow was good. That was, I still lament about Green Arrow. Because I was fanatically into that show for the first 2.5 seasons.
Because it was rad.
It was so good. And I thought it looked stupid. I thought it was a dumb idea for a show. And the first couple of seasons were so good, where he had, and the setup was great, Rob. He had this diary, his dad who committed suicide to save his life. He had this diary of his with a list of names. And the show is basically a, weekly procedural kind of thing of who's the next name on the list. And like his whole thing, you have failed this city, his back to protect. And it lost its way. Now, I'm not saying they should have done 7 years of every week going out of the book, but I feel like halfway through season 3, they lost their way. And it certainly had its moments again. It certainly did have its moments again throughout the years, but it just was never able to recapture that incredible magic I feel like the first couple of seasons had that I did love. And again, it had its highlights throughout the rest of it. It did, but it never recaptured that. But I don't know. Did you ever watch much of Arrow? I can't remember if you ever watched much of Arrow.
I did. I was really into the first. I'm a huge Green Arrow fan, and I really liked what they did with the show. And I sort of fell out. But then again, I fell out of watching all the shows religiously. I kind of catch up with them. I watch a lot of the CW hero shows in the summer, to be honest. When they're all out, because then I can sit down and I like going from one to the other to the other to the other, as opposed to binge watching them all at once. Right. I like going from the Flash to Arrow to Legends of Tomorrow. That, and now of course there's Black Lightning, which I really dig, and I've got to catch up with Batwoman.
All right, next up we've got Willow, who writes. Someone mentioned Elizabeth Taylor the other day. My parents think that she's the most beautiful actress from the golden age of Hollywood. It's hard to argue against that. Who do you think is the most beautiful actor or actress from that era? Listen, I think a lot of people, when they think of Elizabeth Taylor, they think of older Elizabeth Taylor, who was still beautiful. But in her Cleopatra days, I mean, she kind of came to define what Hollywood beauty was. I mean, she was stunning, absolutely stunning. Rob, how would you answer that?
Well, she was stunning, but Willow asks, who would you also say defines? To me, there's one answer, and it's not Elizabeth Taylor. My one answer for a character in a movie that I know is fictional, that doesn't exist. But if I had to pick one character in a movie to spend the rest of my life with, it would be Grace Kelly's character from Rear Window. I mean, I don't think there's not a more beautiful, more put together, more spunky, more amazing woman in any movie than Grace Kelly in Hitchcock's Rear Window. It's my favorite Hitchcock movie, and she's amazing. But to me, she defines, of course, she went on to marry Prince Rainier. So, she became literally a princess. And she's always been a princess to me. So
I got one for you. I got Katharine Hepburn in not the African Queen, the Amazon, the one where they're on the boat going down the river.
No, that's the African Queen.
That is the African Queen. Okay, sorry, yeah. Katharine Hepburn in that.
She's very stunningly
spunky. Had that spunky, tomboyish kind of feel. Super beautiful at the same time. The golden age of Hollywood, man. The golden age of Hollywood. Okay, let's keep moving on here. Where'd he go? TJ writes, the reason people like me are willing to support your show is when you answer their question in a chat. Not only do you answer, but you also comment further as if you're answering a follow-up question, and it feels interactive. You're always like that since AMC. Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, listen, when they're really, really little short questions, whatever, maybe I'll answer quickly. But when guys like you and everybody else send in a question, and you're supporting the show while you're doing it, it's a neat question. I like to just do more than yes, no, next question, right. Or something like that. I like to talk about it a bit because you support the question. I want to give you the best answer that I can. So I appreciate that, TJ. Thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that very much. Let's see. John Campea's son writes, Dad, I know you think Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars movie, but I think Phantom Menace is the best. Well, if I did have a son, I wouldn't anymore. We move on. Where are we? Crap, where do we go? 50 Shades writes, I wore my Green Arrow costume for a little trip to the mall. Almost everyone who saw me thought I was a Ninja Turtle. Seriously, people, do I even look like a turtle? Normally I look like a Ninja Turtle, but today, fuck those guys. I mean, it depends. I mean, if you don't do your costume right, you can look like something else entirely. All right, 50 Shades also writes, I don't think giving Black Widow the same serum that was given to Cap and Bucky would necessarily make her more badass. Cap and Bucky use their strength and endurance to their advantage. Natasha uses her speed, agility, and size. Given her super strength, would only complicate things for her by changing her battle strategy. Could be interesting to watch, though. I disagree. I disagree. Because with the super soldier serum, Captain America got faster. And he still had incredible combat techniques, but it made him even stronger and faster. When you just point out yourself that Natasha relies on her speed, right? And agility. Guess what? Cap's speed and agility just increased. So you take that strength of hers and you multiply it. But you add on top of that now, when she gives you the gut punch, instead of going, oh, you go, I'm dead. I mean, so I disagree. Now, would it make her change her technique a little bit? Probably. But there's a reason why in the movies that Natasha cannot take Bucky. They set that up clearly. Natasha can't take Bucky because Bucky's got a massive unfair advantage. He's been roboticized, basically, not to mention the arm and all that kind of stuff. He's got all those unfair advantages. Natasha can't take Cap because of those unfair advantages. Just like, Hawkeye can't take Vision. Hawkeye is a super skilled dude, but Vision is Vision. The most Hawkeye could do when he confronted Vision was slow him down for a second or two. And then, Scarlet Witch had to save his ass. So, I mean, there's a reason for that. So I believe, if she had the super soldier serum, she would be, she's already formidable. You add super soldier serum to that? Dude, right. I don't know, Rob. I don't know. Do you agree that maybe it wouldn't change much, or do you think it would be fundamentally different?
No, I think it'd be fundamentally different. It's yes, the super soldier serum. We haven't seen or heard exactly what are the parameters, like what does it do? It probably does different things to different people, but we've certainly seen Captain America and Bucky. Captain America with his shield went head to head with Iron Man, bro. In full armor in Civil War. I think getting super soldier serum substantially ups your abilities. And I think, yes, if you take it, it may, you can't fight the Vision. The Vision's one of the most powerful entities in the MCU. Maybe not Hulk powerful, but in a different way. So you're not going to do much to someone like Vision, but against other people, oh yeah.
Okay, we move on here. Next comes to us from Anonymous, who writes, hi, John, my interest in The Hunt. That reminds me, I've got a screening of The Hunt tonight that I totally forgot about. My interest in The Hunt increased after I realized it was written by Damon Lindelof from The Watchmen, The Leftovers, and Lost. I cannot wait to see it. I'm intrigued by this movie. I really am. I am very much intrigued by this film. And Lindelof has some hits and misses. But when he hits hard. And if this can be a hit, of course, Blumhouse is involved with this as well. So that's a feather in its cap. So that's a big thing. Rob, where's your interest level right now in seeing The Hunt?
I love me a good humans hunting other humans with a lot of political satire thrown in for good measure. Because man, of course, is the most dangerous game. And it looks, that new trailer or whatever, I don't know if it was a TV spot or a trailer that I saw, it looked really good. Like, I don't think they did justice to it with, again, the marketing has made the plot of the movie and what the movie's all about sort of come into clearer focus. And I think that clearer focus has made me pretty stoked, dude. I want to see this.
All right. Next up comes to us from 50 Shades, who writes, I'm actually okay with non-English speaking characters talking in English, but with an accent. The way my brain explains it is that they're talking their language to each other in their native language, but the audience is hearing English because they understand each other. 2 of 2. It only works when there are 2 or more characters talking to each other in their native language. It's not believable when there's an English speaking character within hearing distance. So Rob, this came up on the show the other day that somebody mentioned in a movie like Hunt for Red October that sometimes in some movies it's weird to hear, like they go to a scene, cut to a scene in the Kremlin in Russia. And instead of the characters in the scene talking Russian, they're talking English with Russian accents, even though they're talking to each other. And I said, I think there's just a way that the brain sort of explains that to us. It feels like we should hear them. And I said, in Hunt for Red October, they did the most brilliant thing.
In all of cinema history, John, I totally agree.
Yeah, I can't think of another film that's done it where they're speaking Russian, and then they realize they don't want to do that for the whole movie. So we have Sean Connery reading a passage, and the camera kind of zooms into something, and as it starts to pull back, the Russian language changes to an English language. But so it was a visual cue telling the audience, they're speaking Russian. We all get it. They're actually speaking Russian, but we're going to hear it in English, right? I've never seen another film do that. Like, why do you think it is, Rob, that movies, when they're speaking a foreign language, they actually do it in an accent? Is there a point to it? Why do you think it's effective, and why do you think more people do, or more films do it that way? Well,
I mean, look, I think we all know it's like, why on every planet in a Star Trek episode does everybody speak English? It's an affectation. It's something that needs to be done. Like in the Star Wars universe, I don't think they speak English. They speak whatever the basic language is, and I think we just understand. It's a given, or it's something that we as audiences, it's almost like a contract that we're entering into with the filmmakers. We understand that if you're making a movie in America and you want to depict Russians, people criticize Chernobyl for having all the Russians speaking with English accents, because there was all these great English accents, and they're complaining about it. They were complaining that in a movie about Russia that was full of non-Russian speaking people, that they weren't doing Russian accents. And I'm like, how? That's weird. Like, I'm like, I'm like, okay, Jared Harris is a Brit. He's speaking with a British accent. If he was speaking with a Russian accent, it would have seemed sort of weird. Like, I don't know. It's a very weird thing, John, but it also speaks to that weird perceptual issue about how movies are all make-believe anyway. And where do you start drawing the line with verisimilitude, as I like to say? Where do you go? And I think that's one of those just understood conceits that we're all born with, and we all understand if they're going to have Russians in movies and they're going to speak English, they're probably going to do it with a Russian accent to help us understand that, yes, they are Russians. But when you don't do that, like in Chernobyl, people complain. Why aren't they speaking with Russian accents?
All right, next up, Ryan Butler writes, John and guest, have you seen Hunters on Amazon Prime? It's a combo of Schindler's List / random Tarantino movie / Ocean's 11. The tone is everywhere, so there is something for everyone, I guess. Al Pacino's performance is incredible, of course, thanks. I have not seen it. I was excited about it, but then I heard a bunch of people tell me that it was meh. I heard that the first episode's really good, but it's actually not all that great. So there's so much I need to watch. But I've been hearing from a couple of people on the show here, Rob, people writing in saying that they actually quite enjoy it. Have you had a chance to watch Hunters yet, or are you interested in it? Where's your interest right now?
Dude, anybody that is going after Nazis, I am interested. Nazis are the greatest villains that ever were, and not only was the whole thing despicable in real life, but those jackbooted thugs in their black SS outfits. Anybody that's going after them I'm a friend of. And the idea that somebody made Al Pacino chief Nazi hunter in a show set in the 70s, I don't think there's anything that I could think of that could be better. So I can't wait to see it. I've just been catching up on work, and I'm going to sit down and binge that. Maybe next weekend, I'm going to binge that shit because it sounds like it's awesome.
All right, next one up here is Jarius Ashford writes, since the sequel of Knives Out will be about a different cast, would it still be called Knives Out 2, or would it be named differently of something that's associated with the new cast? If they're smart, it'll be Knives Out 2, or Knives Out something, because you want to make sure it's associated. It's just a marketing thing, but from a marketing point of view, they absolutely should keep it the absolute same, because Knives Out wasn't a literal thing from the movie. It was a metaphor used by him. You've all got your knives out and blah, blah, blah. And so I think that's a theme that can run throughout them, but I believe they will still call it Knives Out. Why go back to the drawing board from a marketing point of view? Keep that name in there to make sure there's some association with it, especially since it got a lot of Oscar buzz and got some nominations. So I believe they'll call it either Knives Out 2 or Knives Out: The Mystery of the Sofa Bank. I don't know. They'll do it something like that.
The Sofa Bank, John?
I don't know. I'm making up words.
What's a Sofa Bank?
I'm making up words. I know that wasn't one of my better ones. I have to make a
withdrawal at the Sofa Bank.
I have to make a withdrawal. Sometimes I make up words and it comes out gold. Sometimes I come up with Sofa Bank.
Oh no, that was gold. That was gold.
Was that gold?
Sofa Bank was gold.
All right. Jarius Ashford also writes, do actors get a portion of money received from Hot Toys based on them? My guess, Robert's going to be the one to give the better answer here. So I'm going to tell you my guess first before he does. My guess is probably not. Because my guess is once they sign on to appear in a movie and they're appeared to be in the movie, that image now becomes the property of the studio. Not that your image becomes part of the studio, but that is now what Iron Man looks like. That's what Iron Man looks like. And so we have the freedom to license and property the image of our character, Iron Man, who does look like you. So I'm going to guess no, but let's go to somebody who would actually know the answer at least better than I would. Rob, do they get a portion of it?
Well, it really depends on what they would get is an overall merchandising part of their contract where they would get a percentage of all merchandising. It's usually a small percentage. So look, if I negotiated a contract and I was an actor, I would demand that I get a Hot Toys figure of myself no matter what. But it would all fall under merchandising, and that's a very broad category. But it is very lucrative because if you look, the likeness of Shatner and Nimoy, for instance, on Star Trek, they actually were bought out where the studio just gave them a flat fee. This was, I don't know, about 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It was quite a substantial sum of money, but they sold their likeness rights away. All the merchandising rights were sold for a lump sum. So they do get a piece of that, but they wouldn't get money for specific things. Like they're not going to go, you get a premium because Hot Toys are expensive. You get more money. It doesn't work that way. It's an overall.
In the overall, when I sign up to be in Avengers 5, my agent, if my agent's smart, will put as a part of my overall contract, hours, locations, availability dates, merchandising. That'll be a sub-paragraph in that would cover all that, is what you're saying. That makes sense. Right.
Now, here's the thing. I don't know when it comes to Marvel because these characters have already existed for so long and they already have merchandising like Batman, like you pointed out, Iron Man. All of these characters have been merchandised forever. You might not get that, but the thing is, if they want to use Robert Downey Jr.'s face, which they do in Hot Toys, Robert Downey Jr. would have to have a merchandising part of his contract if they're going to use a likeness, because Hot Toys, when they first started making Aliens figures back 15 years ago, they did not have likeness approval for all of the actors that played the Colonial Marines. So when Hot Toys made Colonial Marines figures, they couldn't look like the actors from Aliens.
They just look generic.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Good question, man. All right. Next one up. Luke1234 writes, Screen Rant and other sites have reported that Rey's father was a failed Palpatine clone. Could this affect your enjoyment of Episode 7? Well, this, of course, comes from the novelization. That's what's in there. And that's idiotic. It's an idiotic thing. But no, I've always said before, things that happen later, never, whether reboots happen or whether they do something later, for me, it never affects my enjoyment of a previous film. So I do not like Rise of Skywalker, but I love the Force Awakens. Whatever they did in Rise of Skywalker does not affect my enjoyment of Force Awakens. Whatever they do with the Rise of Skywalker novelization doesn't affect my enjoyment of The Force Awakens. Generally speaking, if they reboot a movie that I love, that doesn't affect positively or negatively my enjoyment of a previous movie. That other movie still stands on its own. I can watch it. I can enjoy it. There's that. So no, even though that's really, really stupid, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of Episode 7. Dan Ketchum writes, putting off movie going for now. You? Oh, no, not at all. No, I'm going. I forgot. I was going to try to go see The Way Back, but I forgot I got the Hunt screening tonight. So no, I'm not putting off going to the movies. Russell Amador writes, Hey, John, so decided to finally treat myself since didn't want to step out, but buying the UFC pay-per-view this past weekend and watch from the comfort of home. But one small thing, the main event sucked ass. Man, those ladies put on a show. Fight for the ages. Oh, my God. Rob, I don't know if you saw any of it or heard any of it. Okay, the main event at the UFC this weekend was a bit of a snooze fest. It was a bit of a snooze. It was Last Stylebender versus Yoel Romero, and it was what promised to be a fireworks of a fight turned out to be an absolute snore fest. But the co-main event that happened before it, Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the former champion versus the current Chinese champion, It was one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life. This fight, man or woman, these two women went into that ring and delivered the best fight I've seen in years, Rob. Years. It's the kind of fight that makes me love combat sports. Because first of all, you got Joanna in there, and Joanna, by the end of it, I've never seen anything like it, Rob. She looked like a Klingon. Because she had a hematoma. She had a hematoma on her forehead. You could see it in the middle of one of the rounds. She started getting this bump and started growing. And then another bump, and it started growing. By the time the fight was done, and they're standing in the middle of the ring waiting for the ref to raise one of their arms, her head came out about this far. It was one of the strangest things. Like, we're watching the fight, and Anne and Ray are screaming, "Don't hit her in the head anymore!" Because it's just, but she was hanging in the pocket and trading and exchanging. And this fight was action, 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 back and forth, and it ended up being a split decision. So at the end, Bruce Buffer's in there. Judge so-and-so rules it 49-48. Whaley. Judge so-and-so scores it 49-48. Joe Chachek. And the final judge scores it 49-48. So all three judges scored it 49-48. It was crazy close, 5-round fight, and it went to the champ. And I'm telling you guys, if you don't watch mixed martial arts, this is the kind of fight that will make you a UFC fan. It's like back in the day of the Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin fight that a lot of people who never even heard of MMA, when the all-time greatest UFC fight that ever happened, Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, that fight turned people into UFC fights. This is that kind of fight, Rob. This is that kind of fight. It was unbelievable. People are screaming at their television things, and like the Twitter just exploded. Like, it was... Guys, if you're not into UFC, watch this fight. I mean, these two women went in there, showed in like a skill level and heart and passion and grit and, dare I say, balls that you rarely see. It was one of the most damn awesome things I had ever seen. I was so excited, I pulled my headphone jack out. But anyway, yeah, sorry. The main event, though, was ass. It's really too bad because you had two of the most exciting fighters in the world in Stylebender and Romero, and it turned out to be just a boring snooze fest. Anyway, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving, shall we? Next one up. That was Russell Amador. Ryan Lohner writes, the remake coming up soon reminded me of this one. The voice of Mulan's grandmother, Taki Tina, and she has an insanely huge career across 8 decades, so I could keep this up for a while. I'm not quite sure what it is we're talking about, Ryan. I'll say the remake coming up. I don't know what remake we're talking about. Oh, we're talking about Mulan. Soon reminded me of this one. The voice of Mulan's grandmother, Taki Tina. Oh, did somebody point out that in the animated version of Mulan, that the woman who did the voice of her grandmother is the same woman who did the voice of Taki Tina, or is it just, I'm not sure what it is.
Taki Tina from the Twilight Zone?
From the Twilight Zone. I'm Taki Tina, and I'm going to kill you. And she had an insanely huge career across 8 decades, so I could keep this up for a while. So is that true, though? Is that true?
You know what? I don't know. I'm looking that up right now.
Because that's interesting.
That is interesting.
You look that up. I'll keep moving here.
June Foray played Talking Tina, but she passed away on July 26, 2017.
But did she do the voice of Mulan?
She was Rocky the Flying Squirrel. She was in Fritz Freeling cartoons. Let's see.
But did she do the Mulan animated film?
I'm looking. Let's see. Mulan. She did a lot, dude. Mulan. She was Mulan 2, Grandmother Fa, direct to video. Let's see, where is Mulan?
Then she
was Grandmother Fa. Talking Tina is Grandmother Fa. Wow, I didn't know that.
That is awesome. This is why I love the live question part of the show. We learn stuff like this. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. All right, let's keep moving on here. King of the Hills 34 writes, saw The Way Back, solid, enjoyed it, and recommend it. It's like that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Everybody's saying it's really quite good. And again, proving once again that when the audience screams that they want original films, no, they don't. They're lying. They're just saying that to sound cool because this a really solid, well-reviewed, well-received original film comes out and they don't go to watch it. It's really unfortunate. All right, ZOMG Ruler writes, Over, under. 30% you'll dislike one of the next 4 MCU films. Oh, over. I'd say there's a 30% chance I'll dislike any MCU film. So if you add that up over 4 films, I'd say it's probably over 30%. I'll dislike one of them, but that's the same of any movie. That's the same of any movie, really. So yeah, that's fine. JJ the Sith Plane writes, sends in a $50 tip. Thank you so much, JJ. So we're almost all caught up on our $50 questions, but when somebody sends in a tip of $50 or more, which doesn't happen a lot, but thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level. If there's a question, we will answer the question here in the show, but then we'll also in the upcoming week answer it in its own standalone video. So let's see what JJ has to say. Now that we have Disney Plus out with new MCU shows, do you think they'll update the contract of actors to be in certain amounts of films and including TV shows appearances? Example, Mark Ruffalo in She-Hulk. The answer to that question is simply yes. Yes. So what started happening a bunch of years ago is that studios started, when they had big films coming up and they were looking for somebody to play a role, they would put in the contract a certain number of film commitment from that actor in case they wanted to go and do another one, right? So then they wouldn't have to renegotiate with the actor and pay them 5 times more than they did the previous one. They'd want to lock them in for a long-term deal. Now, that didn't mean that the studio had to use that actor if they didn't want to, but it did mean the actor had to come back and reprise the role. And that has obviously become more and more prevalent as we get into the MCU. Now, when somebody signs up to play a certain hero, they sign them for like a 7-film deal, just to make sure. I have no doubt, JJ, that, and Rob, as we head into this era now of the streaming wars, I have no doubt that the studios will include in that contract X number of films, and they have to make themselves available to appear in whatever for Disney Plus. Again, just because they put that in the contract, that doesn't mean Disney has to use them in a TV show if they don't want to. But I would be shocked, Rob, if I found out that Disney and Kevin Feige and Alan Horn didn't start putting Disney Plus allocations into these contracts for these people playing it. Do you think they're going to do that, or do you think they're doing it already?
No, I think they might be doing it already, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, they're gonna have to. I mean, that's just, the business is evolving, and this is going to be part of that evolution. So.
All right. Hey, and again, JJ, thank you so much for supporting the channel at that level, and keep your eye open in this coming week. We're reducing it from weeks to week now because we're almost caught up on all of our $50 questions. Yeah. So thank you so much for that again. Sam O'Neill writes, a movie that made me want to be a better man is Captain America, the First Avenger. When I saw that at the age of 12, it hit me hard. And Rob, that is one of the things that I contend that is one of the more underrated MCU movies is Captain America, the First Avenger.
Oh, and
it's great.
It gets better as the years go by. I mean, I find myself returning to that movie again and again, and it's thoroughly enjoyable.
Okay, let's see. JJ sends in, wow, it's really supportive today, sends in another $50 tip. Thank you, JJ, for supporting the channel on that level, dude. All right, so the question is, so now that the whole virus thing is going on, do you think it'll have a negative impact on the box office? Well, in certain parts of the world, we're already seeing it have an impact. Obviously in China, in Italy, and in some other places as well. How much of an effect will it have on North American box office? Right now, I still think the number of people in the entire country of the US that has it, I think is around 500. I think that's the total number of everybody in the country who has it is 500. So how much of an impact it will have on moviegoing in the US in general will greatly depend on how well or how poorly the American government responds to the situation and gets this thing under control over the next little while. Today, I don't think a lot of effort. I think a lot of people are saying box office this weekend will be affected by the coronavirus at the box office. But almost none of them will say, but I'm not going. Like, yeah, I'm still going out, but I think everybody else will stay home. So I don't think there's that big of an impact right now domestically. But again, depending on how this evolves, it could moving forward, but it all depends. Rob, how would you address that?
Well, look, there's obviously a lot of fear out there, and part of the stopping of the spread of this virus is to get out in front of it, which we in North America did not do a very good job of. So it's really going to be telling to see what happens in the next weeks are going to be very telling to see where box office is going to go. I mean, I think a lot of places like South by Southwest were smart in the Emerald City Comic Con for scuttling their conventions and either moving them into the future at some date or postponing them indefinitely. It really depends on how well we control it. And look, I think that it's not like it's there's a lot of fear out there, but I think if you do what the doctors tell us to do and follow the what the scientists are saying, such as washing your hands and such as if you have a cough, self quarantine. If people take that to heart, maybe it won't have the effect that it's having in Italy, where half the population of the country is under quarantine. But we'll have to see. It's going to be very interesting. I think the next month is going to be very, very telling.
All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. Okay, just a couple more here while we got Robert around. Mr. Hoover writes, hi, John and company. Did you know that Antonio Banderas and Ruben Fleischer, the director of Venom, are joining the Uncharted movie? What are your guys' thoughts? Well, actually, Ruben Fleischer, we talked about that weeks ago. It was said that Ruben Fleischer was going to be joining as the new director of the film. So that was several weeks ago. Antonio Banderas, we talked about that last week. But listen, I always think it's never a bad thing to add talent. Ruben Fleischer also has a couple of really, really good ones under his belt besides Venom. I really enjoyed Venom a lot. And Antonio Banderas is coming off what some people might think is his best performance of his career that just got him an Academy Award nomination. So adding that is great. So yeah, I'm excited about the news, more so about the Antonio Banderas move, but I think Ruben Fleischer could be a really interesting choice for directing this as well. Rob, what do you think about these names being added to Uncharted?
I think they're all great. I mean, I like Ruben Fleischer. I think that this movie's shaping up to be pretty great, and everyone's talking about how good the script is. I know people say that, but usually when the actors are saying how good the script is, it usually makes me feel pretty good about it.
Okay, next up comes to us from Winnie the Pooh, who writes, "What's up with you meeting people from studios?" I don't know. We meet people from studios. We work in this industry. We're going to meet people in this industry.
I used to work in a studio.
Yeah, I was going to say, Robert Meyer Burnett is a studio person. You worked in the studios.
I worked for the senior vice president of physical production at Warner Brothers. So, yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. But this does resonate. There are some people who just have no idea how any of this works and think, oh, well, if you met somebody, that means you're just going to say that their movie's good. No, listen, Hasbro contributes half of my household income, and I call them out on shit all the time.
Right.
I have a life debt to the filmmakers, the Crank filmmakers, Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. I have a life debt to those guys because of the movie they made and because of the party I threw for them. Because of them, I met my wife. I met my wife because of them. I have a life debt to them. Ask me to tell you what I think about their movie Gamer. It doesn't matter that I consider them friends. It doesn't matter that they helped introduce me to my wife. It doesn't matter that I have a life debt to them. When it comes to my job, I'm going to tell you Gamer's not very good. I'm going to tell you that. I love these guys, and I love some of their other movies, but I did not like that movie. When it comes to my job is my job, and it doesn't matter if I have a relationship with them or not. But a lot of people think that everybody's stupid. It's like, oh, if you know this guy, that means you'll never say something bad. No, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. And my track record proves that. And I think most people in my business, that's true. Like, hey, you can love certain things and certain people, but if they put out something that you don't like, you call that you don't like it. I mean, that's just it. So anyway, there it is. But it's also not surprising that we meet. This is the business I work in. So if you work in the McDonald's business, you're going to meet people in the McDonald's business. If you work in plumbing, you're going to meet people in the plumbing business. If you work in the movie industry, you're going to meet people in the movie industry. I mean, that's just how it works. Let's see. Daniel Rahimi writes, saw The Way Back this past weekend. A lot of people are saying this is good. This past weekend, hope you did too, and I loved it. It's my favorite movie of the year so far. Affleck gives one of his best performances. Supporting characters were good, including the players. Bold ending to the movie, which I appreciated. I am so excited to see this. The next 48 hours, for sure, I'm going to see it. I was going to go see it tonight, but I forgot I got a screening for The Hunt. I don't know. Maybe I'll double feature it up. Maybe I'll do both. But I got to see this movie. I'm so excited to hear so many of you guys having gone out to see it and that you liked it. It makes me excited for it. I've been really intrigued with this movie for a long time now, so I'm really, really stoked to see this. All right. Superman Steve writes, John, can you please help us understand inflation in a nutshell? Why don't you just ask me to describe tax brackets? I don't know. I'm not a financial expert. Inflation. the value of the dollar fluctuates over time. So what was worth something in one era is different in another era. I don't know, Rob, how would you explain inflation?
Stuff gets more expensive, which means your dollar is worth less.
And therefore we get more dollars to hopefully equal out so other than that, believe me, Superman Steve, I am no financial expert. So I'm the wrong guy to ask. That's just it. I'm just the wrong guy to ask. That's all. All right. Last question we're going to ask with Robert here. Ovidio writes, if you ever talk to Ben Affleck about the way back and dealing with his issues and alcoholism, tell him it's not your fault. It's not your fault. That sounds like a line that's from Good Will Hunting. I don't know if that is also a line in this movie, but that's a line from Good Will Hunting. First of all, I have had the opportunity to meet Ben Affleck a couple of times and talk to him about certain movies. My favorite, of course, when I got to get together and talk to him about Argo, which is, I remember, Rob, when I sat down with Ben Affleck about Argo, the first thing I said to him was, dude, if you don't get a Best Director nomination for this movie, I'm going to slash somebody's tires. And he's like, well, let's hope I get a nomination. And of course, he didn't get a nomination. His film won Best Picture, but he didn't get a nomination. Go figure. I don't know, but I do hope I do get a chance to do that. But Rob, like you were saying, you and I have both been Ben Affleck fans for a long time. And, you know, this was a movie that at first felt odd. Really, Ben? You being in the news all the time with your substance abuse problems and your life got kind of broken, and now doing a movie about a guy with alcohol abuse problems and whose life got broken. Is this a good idea? But as we got closer and closer to it, it started to feel more right. It started to feel cathartic, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what we're hearing from people. So I don't know, where are you right now on this whole thing, and how do you think people are taking it?
I think, he brought his life experience to this film. I think it can only help the realism and the verisimilitude of the movie, and good on him for doing it. He picks good material. I can't wait to see this movie.
What are some of your favorite Ben Affleck ones?
You know, like we talked about, The Accountant. Obviously, I love The Accountant. I have some love for Daredevil, the director's version of Daredevil. But I loved him. I love Gone Girl, dude. I mean, the fact that
I love that movie.
The fact that he worked with Fincher, I mean, that says a lot. Then our favorite Sam Jackson, Ben Affleck movie, Changing Lanes.
Oh, yes. I love that film.
I'm a big fan of Reindeer Games.
Really?
John Frankenheimer's. I've got the director's cut on Blu-ray. I'm a big fan. So, yeah.
All right, well, hey, listen, Rob, I know you've got things you got to do, so we'll let you go right now. But in the meantime, where can people find you and all your adventures online?
You can find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations.
All right, dude. Thanks so much for being here, and we will look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
All right.
Have a good one, man. Guys, we still got a few minutes here, so we're going to keep all right on rolling with your guys' live questions. So let's keep things rolling here. Let's see. Sam O'Neill writes, my internet is down, so I decided to chuck on, pun intended, my favorite TV series, Chuck. I forgot how good it is. Action, drama, comedy, romance. I loved Chuck. I really did. It didn't finish strong to me. It didn't finish strong. But it was such, and you know what? Adam Baldwin was really, really great in it. The girl, Yoveski, I always mispronounce her last name. Anyway, she's now in Handmaid's Tale. She was the lead girl in Chuck. She was great. I mean, I enjoyed that show so much. From Chuck, his best friend. I mean, it was just a really enjoyable show. It ended, I didn't think it had the strongest ending, but I overall really liked it, Sam. SEJ999 writes, hey, John, big fan since AMC. Thank you so much. You're inspirational. Thank you. First time question. Buy one, rent one, lose one. Return to the King, Shawshank. Life is beautiful. Oh, jeez. Oh, I don't know. A pass. Pass. These are three of the greatest movies ever made. Those literally are three of the greatest movies ever made. I think Shawshank is a top 5 greatest film ever made. I think Return to the King holds the record for most Academy Award wins, including Best Picture. Life is Beautiful is just one of the most powerful films I've ever seen. I cannot do anything but pass. I have to pass. I can't. I think I would rather cut off my thumb than have to lose any one of those three. I think I would rather cut off my thumb. So I'm going to have to take a solid pass on that one. I don't like taking a pass on these questions, but I got to take a pass on that one. I just can't help it. All right. Mom Spaghetti writes, there's vomit on his sweater already. Mom Spaghetti. Anyway, some people will get that reference. Hi, Mom and gang. So I'm caught up on all the shows my wife allowed me to watch without her, and I'm looking through Netflix to see one of my favorite movies, The Last Samurai, and decided to watch it. Without fail, I always start to tear up at the end of the final battle when Katsumoto says, maybe the way of the samurai isn't necessary anymore. Then Algren says, what could be more necessary? Powerful quote, and always gets me a bit teary-eyed. Do you have a favorite quote that does that? I mean, I've talked a lot about the Lord of the Rings when he says, my friends, you bow to no one. I mean, that's one that always gets me. And I've talked a lot about that. And Rohan shall answer is another big one that always gets. Those are both Lord of the Rings quotes. But that is a surprisingly good movie. The Last Samurai. That when you go back to it, because I've gone back a couple of times and watched that movie again. And each time, I shouldn't be, but each time I find myself surprised by, oh yeah, this movie's really good. Like, and I keep forgetting how good it is. And then I watch it again and it's like, oh yeah, that was really good. And I keep being surprised by the quality of it. But anyway, the ending of the film is really good, especially when you got the samurai trying to fight all these dudes with weapons, guns and stuff like that. It's just, amazing. Anyway, Robert Tari writes, over under 5% Steve Rogers appears to Natasha a la time travel on Black Widow post-credit scene. 5% is low. 5% is low. I'm still going to go under. Listen, that sounds like a really neat idea. I'll be down for it if they do it. I don't think they're going to do it though, so I'll still go under 5%, but it would be kind of neat if they did. Ludin Swain writes, The Way Back, a well-told story that addresses addiction head-on, doesn't try to provide a cure for alcoholism, but as the title suggests, The Way Back. Ben is authentic, raw, and emotionally connects. That's all good to hear. Because listen, you guys know I have been, irrationally so, one of Ben Affleck's biggest fans for years. When they announced him as Batman, me and John Schnepp were like two of the only guys on the internet. When everybody else was mocking it and laughing at the casting, I was like, this is great. This is going to work. Because I just love Ben Affleck so much. So it's so great to see him not only doing a film like this and really wrapping himself in it, but also seeing the response that the people who have seen it, and not many people have, are giving the film. It's really good to see, and I'm so glad to hear your report on that, Ludin. So thanks for sharing that, and I just can't wait to see it. My wife and I both have just been chomping at the bit to see it, so hopefully we'll be able to get out and see it tonight. Robert Tari writes, Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars. With the exception of Big Hero 6, they really haven't utilized animation with them. Which studios' properties would you like to see animated? Not much. Listen, I love a good animated thing, but I also kind of prefer live action. But certain movies are just best in animated. Aladdin, Lion King, all that kind of stuff. I really can't think of anything that's in Star Wars or Marvel's property vault that I would prefer to see as an animated film over a live action film. I'll always prefer to see my Star Wars live action. I'll always prefer to see my MCU stuff live action. That doesn't mean they can't make an animated thing and it be awesome, like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But if you ask me ahead of time and I had my choice, would I rather than make this live action or animated, I'll always say live action. And they could do animated and it could turn out crap, or they could do animated and it could turn out to be one of the best films of the year, like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But if you ask me in advance, I'll always say live action. That's kind of my preference on that. John Demoto writes, John, what do you think of the new Black Widow trailer this morning? Do you think COVID-19 will affect its opening weekend? I really don't think that stuff will affect it much, but then again, we have to see how this all unravels, because 1 week from today could look very different from today. Right? 1 week for today could be 4 times worse, or it could be almost eliminated. We don't know. So just going off of what we have today, I don't think there's going to be much of an impact in domestically, at any rate. Domestically, obviously in China, obviously in Italy, obviously in a couple of other countries. I don't think much today. But again, ask me that question again in a week because the answer could be completely different. The Burke the Nerd writes. Burke the Nerd also sends in a $50 super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And if there's a question in here, we'll not only answer it right now, we'll also answer it in its own standalone video. So again, thank you so much for supporting us on that level, Burke. All right, Burke writes, you inspired me to start my YouTube channel, Burke the Nerd. We just did a stream on my channel about how big the Sonic/Pikachu movies were and discussed a Super Smash Bros. Cinematic universe like the MCU. Are cinematic universes the key to consistent success? Absolutely not. No. There's only one example of cinematic universes being the key to consistent success, and that's MCU. That's it. Universal tried to launch a big cinematic universe, and that flopped. The DCEU has had very questionable success. Despite the fact that I like all the movies, it's been a mixed bag with what the DCEU has had. And you can make the argument that as they've moved away from cinematic universes, where they're getting their bigger box office success now. Aquaman was very much a standalone movie, very separated from the DCEU. Joker was very much outside of the DCEU. And that's, you're talking about their two biggest financial successes. So I would argue that there are more examples of cinematic universe not working than are. Now, you could say the horror franchise, the Conjuring. You could say, John, Conjuring. Yeah, but most people don't even know the Conjuring universe is connected. You ask a lot of just average movie fans, they have no idea the Conjuring universe is even a thing. They just see all these individual films. So I would make the argument, I guess I can take my headphones off now that Robert's not here. I would make the argument that there's actually very little to no evidence. The MCU is one example of it working, and it works great, but there's more examples of it not working. So no. Definitely not. The cinematic universe's key to success is not cinematic universes. No, I don't believe that at all. But again, we'll go more in depth into that when we answer your question in its own standalone video, Burke. Again, thank you so much for the support on that level, man. We appreciate it around here. RJ Technovine writes, Taskmaster is no joke. He's been to Wakanda. I don't know if he's been to Wakanda or if he's just studied the footage, but he looks way more badass now than he did to me before. That's for sure. Colby Harris writes, is Screen Rant a reliable source? Because I saw an article that said Tom Rothman of Sony wants Spider-Man to stay in the MCU and make a new deal. Remember, that is not a Screen Rant story. That's just a story that Screen Rant also ran. Where that comes from is last month, Tom Rothman and the heads of all the major studios, including Alan Horn, the heads of Netflix, the heads of all the major studios, did this amazing video. It's up on YouTube. And it's called The Roundtable, the Studio Head Roundtable, and it's by The Hollywood Reporter put it together. It's amazing to see all these big studio heads at the same table talking about issues of the day and things like that. In that roundtable, the question was brought up by the moderator because they had Tom there and they had Alan there at the same table. They brought up the Spider-Man issue. And the moderator asked, would you like to see it continue, this deal that you made? And Tom Rothman said a very PR thing to say. He goes, oh, of course we would. It was a win-win-win. This is what he said. This deal is a win for Sony. It's a win for Disney, and it's a win for the fans. It was just a very PR thing to say. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't want it to continue. Not at all. But I really wouldn't read anything into that at all. He was very cognizant of fans were watching this. He said what I think fans wanted to hear. Alan Horn backed it up, but I really wouldn't read anything into that. Maybe the deal will continue after the next two. I don't think it will, but it might, or maybe it won't. But I really wouldn't put any emphasis or weight or anything on that at all. And again, that wasn't a Screen Rant story. That was done on the Hollywood Roundtable that's up on YouTube, and Screen Rant was just one of many sites that reported about it. So, Tom Rothman said that, but you got to take into consideration what was the context in which he said it, what was going on in which he said it. So I wouldn't put anything into it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I really wouldn't put any weight into that. Yoshai writes, Denis Villeneuve has recently become one of my favorite directors working today. What is your favorite movie of his? I'd say Prisoners. That's mine. Prisoners or Enemy. Thanks. Yeah, I got to say Prisoners. Hopefully, I'll have a new favorite one in Dune, because he's, of course, directing Dune right now. Denis Villeneuve, and he did such a great job on Blade Runner. I actually preferred his Blade Runner over the original. That's not saying much, because I didn't really like the original Blade Runner, so I'm one of the only guys in the world who didn't. But yeah, so there you go. I think he's great, but Prisoners, I think, is my favorite movie of his. But Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, the whole cast, and it's just so good, and it's so powerful and gut-wrenching and hard to watch in some ways, but in all the most perfect, beautiful ways. I go Prisoners. All right. Carlos Hernandez writes, is the Spawn movie happening, yes or no? I mean, he keeps saying he's making it. I've said from day one I have my doubts. I still have my doubts. I'm going to guess it's not going to happen. My guess is that it's not going to happen. But again, I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying my guess right now is that no, it won't. He keeps saying it will, though. Charles A. writes, have you guys been to Frank & Sons Collectibles? No, but my wife and I were just talking this weekend. My friend Ryan and my brother-in-law Ray have been. I want to go badly. So we're thinking sometimes this month we want to go. It's like the Comic-Con floor running year round. I really do want to go. Charles also writes, it's like a swap meet for different collectibles. Yeah, I definitely want to go see it. I haven't had a chance yet, though. Ramit Mittal writes, Mr. Campea, Michael Cole and Rob equal Jerry Lawler. Michael Cole and Rob equal Jerry the King Lawler. You know what? Maybe. That's actually, that might be true. All right. Michael Peter Stankiewicz writes, hey, John, show earlier today or time change? No, regular showtime today. Is the 1984 in Wonder Woman, 1984, the reference to George Orwell book? If so, are there details about it? Bad that your new tip system allows only using PayPal. I am not aware of other option. Well, first of all, there are two different ways. One is PayPal, which you clearly used, which is great. The other way is using the super chat system on YouTube. Now, the reason the PayPal one works, like using the tip link, if you guys look in the description of this video, the very top line is a tip link. That is the best and most preferred way for people to send in questions and tips, because when you use super chat, which is great if you use super chat, thank you for using super chat. The difference is when you use super chat, YouTube will keep 1/3 of what it is you tip. So if you tip $21 on, say, a super chat, YouTube will keep $7 of it, and I'll get 14. Whereas with PayPal, if you tip $21, I think PayPal keeps just a tiny percent. I think I get like 20 instead of 14. So there's that, but there are two different options. You can use the YouTube super chat system, or you can use the tip system, but they both work. I believe the 1984 in Wonder Woman is simply a reference to the year. Now, I've asked the same question myself. Like, could that be a reference to the 1984 book? That maybe the villain in the film is trying to bring about an Orwellian kind of dystopic future through it. Maybe it's possible. I've asked the same question myself, but from everything that I know right now, which isn't everything that I know right now just says it's just a reference to the year. But we will find out when the movie comes out. Good question, though. I've asked the same thing myself. Ryan Lohner writes, this insanity became one of my favorite von Sydow lines. General, to me, she'll always be royalty. It was a great line, a great opening to a great movie, The Force Awakens. I'm with you, Ryan. Starting out with Max von Sydow at the beginning of The Force Awakens is a great way to start a film, and I did love the line. All right, Stubble McShave writes, I loved Max von Sydow in 3 Days of the Condor. That was another great one that he did. Again, when I think of him, though, I know it's strange, but mainly because it's Canadian and a lot of it was shot in my hometown of Hamilton. When I think of him, I will always go, I mean, Seventh Seal is definitely a big one and all that kind of stuff, but I definitely go to Bob and Doug McKenzie's Strange Brew with Rick Moranis, Dave Thomas, and of course he was Brewmeister Smith, the villain of the film. God, I loved him in that. And yeah, we've lost a treasure, that's for sure. All right, Dirk Walker writes, Taskmaster uses a bow and arrow in the first trailer, then a shield, Cap style in the second. Now a third one, he crosses his arms and extends claws like Black Panther. WTF, is he mimicking all the Avengers? Well, it also feels like in this trailer, we talked about this earlier, it also feels like in the trailer, he's studying the Avengers, right? It almost feels like he's studying the Avengers and their techniques and approaches, and that just makes him real damn scary. So I don't know. We'll have to see what the whole deal with him is as we move further. All right. Finding Neo writes, Black Widow looks like the Metal Gear Solid movie we never got. Have you ever played Metal Gear Solid 5? Never did. I watched my buddies play it, though. If so, what do you think of it? Seems like a good game. I never played it much, to be honest with you. That was never my game of choice. But man, I'm just telling you, this trailer really, like the last trailer got me going, okay, you know what? I'm interested in Black Widow. But this trailer made me excited for the movie. And you guys know, if you followed me for a long time, Hawkeye, Black Widow, I'm not interested in solo projects for either of them. I love them in the MCU, in their supporting roles. I think they're magnificent in those roles, but I'm just not interested in standalone stuff for either of those two characters. But I sit here today, ladies and gentlemen, as a changed man. I am absolutely excited. I am absolutely excited for this Black Widow movie now. It's crazy what a trailer can do. All right. That was that Finding Neo? No. Brandon Rayner? Black trailer looks great. Can't wait for this movie now. Has a Winter Soldier vibe to it. Which did we just talk about? How do we get? I can't remember where we were. I lost my place. I'm going crazy, guys. All right, Ben Rayner wrote, this Black Widow trailer looks great. Can't wait for this movie now. Has a Winter Soldier vibe to it. It absolutely does. I cannot wait. I'm so excited for it. Mr. Kaplan writes, funny you talked about starting a channel today. I just created my movie podcast today. I'm super excited. Thank you, John and Rob, for the inspiration. I'm glad you're doing that, Mr. Kaplan. And what she's talking about is, yesterday, now that daylight savings time is back, I was able to do a thoughts on walks video again yesterday. So it's up on my YouTube channel if you want to catch it. And I talked about why, even though you're not going to be able to make a living out of it or make money or become famous, why you should still create a YouTube channel in 2020. And I put that up there. You can go watch it. So I'm glad you had a chance to watch it. And I'm excited that you created your podcast, Mr. Kaplan. That is awesome. So I'm glad you did that. All right. Matt Brown writes, did you hear about Tom Brady's new production company? Every time you think you couldn't like him anymore, then you already do. He does something that makes you like him even more. Go Pats and have a great day. I've not heard about this. Hold on a second. Tom Brady, the GOAT, production company. Let me see this. Tom Brady launching a production company with Avengers directors going hot. Wait a minute. He's launching a production company with the Russo brothers? Really? Oh, this just came out this morning. All right, so here's what's being talked about here. I'll just bring this up. Where's Tom Brady? This is from Deadline. Where's Tom Brady going next? Hollywood to launch 199 Productions with the help from Avengers Endgame directors Joe and Anthony Russo. Really? Tom Brady is the GOAT, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Brady is the GOAT. Let's see if he'll do any good as a movie producer. I don't know. That's good stuff. You know what? We'll talk more about this on the John Campea Show tomorrow. But I'm glad you brought that up, Matt Brown. Thank you so much for bringing that up. All right. Trevor Macy writes, I think if they can get the coronavirus under control earlier, Bond will move to an earlier date since that's why it moved in the first place. But remember, they don't just want to move Bond to any date. They want to move it to a date that can be really effective for them. And they feel that like right by Thanksgiving can be a big, big date for them. So I'm not sure that they move it earlier. Because again, you don't just drop a movie on any date. You drop it on a date that you think will best serve that movie. And so I don't know if it'll move earlier. Maybe they push it later, but I don't know that they move it earlier. We'll find out soon enough. Trevor. All right, Paco Garcia writes, hey, John, I've watched your show religiously since about a year ago. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Today, March 9th, is my birthday. Happy birthday, sir. And I don't see a better way to spend it than watching the John Campea Show live. Thanks for all the good moments and keep making it as filthy as possible. Paco, first of all, thank you for being here and for being a part of the show. And happy birthday to you, man. May you have a great and glorious day and a great and glorious year. Filled, I should say, with unfettered victory and glories ahead of you. May you have a great year and a great day. So happy birthday to you, man. And again, thanks for sending that in. All right. Suthius writes, Cavill can continue his character from Mission Impossible to the MCU, named Bicep Reloader. I ain't never seen anyone reload their arms during a fight. That was a good moment, right? Listen, I just continue to be impressed with Henry Cavill. I bought into Henry Cavill 100% when I saw him in The Tudors. If you haven't seen that show, it's a good show. I mean, it's a good show in its own right. But Henry Cavill was great in that show. And that's the show that really made me get completely on board with him. And he's my favorite Superman of all time. I love him as Superman, and I loved him as The Witcher, and I loved him in Mission Impossible. And whatever he does next, I'm sure I'm going to love him in that too. All right. Seraphim writes, have you heard of the new Blumhouse film possibly based on the Frankenstein story? It's like a Disturbia situation with the Mad Doctor next door. I have not. No, I'm not familiar with that, unless I did and I'm just forgetting, but I have not. That doesn't sound familiar to me, so I don't recall it off the top of my head, but I'm going to have to put that on my radar now and go look it up. This is why I love doing the live questions part of the show. People put stuff on my radar that wasn't there before, so thank you so much for that, Seraphim. I'm going to go look that up. All right, James Durden writes, Max von Sydow, memorable roles: Flash Gordon, of course, Ming the Merciless; Dune, that's right, he was in the original Dune; Ghostbusters 2, Judge Dredd; Skyrim. Oh, I forgot he did a voice in Skyrim. Max von Sydow, April 10th, 1929 to March 8th, 2020. Again, we lost one of the giants, one of the greats in this business. And when somebody hits 90 and has had the amazing career, it's my first thought, honestly, isn't sadness. It's amazement. It's like, wow, look at what this guy did with his career. It's just unbelievable. And it is a shame, though, we're not going to get to see that iconic face and hear that iconic voice in any new movies moving forward. But thanks for sharing that, James. All right. Erwin Perk writes, fun fact, the Dutch translation for sofa is bank. No kidding. Look it up. Really? So when I said sofa bank, I was actually speaking bilingually? I'm smarter than I thought. I am smarter than I thought. Thanks for sharing that, dude. All right. Last question of the day comes to us from Chocolate Thunder, who writes, don't even bother making Last of Us unless you get Meryl Streep as Joel and Daniel Day-Lewis as Ellie. You heard it right here. There's the ultimate casting. Meryl Streep proving she can do anything as Joel, and Daniel Day-Lewis proving he can do anything as Ellie. Book it. Book it, Chocolate Thunder. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of it. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett, who's here a little bit earlier, and of course he'll be joining me again tomorrow when we do Tuesday's edition of the John Campea Show. Guys, make sure, if you haven't done so already, take a second, hit the thumbs up button on this video if you like these types of discussions and these types of videos. Also, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Keep up to date with everything we've got going on here. And guys, a special thank you to all of you who sent in questions, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel while you were doing it. And all of us here involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you very much for that. All right, guys, don't forget to join us again tomorrow. That will do it for me for now. My name is John Campea, guys, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.